So this Green Build show has been really interesting. There are a number of technologies that we've worked with, companies that we've worked with, some new players that have come into the marketplace. I think that the focus of the green building industry has really been primarily on commercial first, and lately there's been a lot of push on single-family residential. Multifamily is this weird hybrid that I think the green building industry is still figuring out how to deal with. Enterprise and enterprise community partners has been driving that conversation a bit. The USGBC that puts on the lead standard and puts on this trade show is recognizing that there's a need for better information. I think many of the vendors are still learning how to deal with this funny hybrid where it's a residential building, but it's got commercial systems in it. Multifamily buildings tend to be clustered in certain parts of the country, where it's a lot more difficult to address that marketplace because you're dealing with owners who are putting things into tenant spaces. The people living in those spaces aren't making the decisions about what materials are used to construct those spaces, and so there's what we call the split incentive problem. There's a disconnect there. In the affordable housing industry, we're starting to see it being addressed in the QAPs and other things that are being released to encourage green building practices within affordable housing, within multifamily affordable housing. But I think it's still a challenge for the vendors to figure out how to market to the multifamily industry. The one that I spent the most time with is a company that is offering sort of an electronic heat strip that goes onto domestic hot water pipes. The idea being that you can save some of the energy that's required in recirculating hot water within a building by keeping the water hot within the pipes using this electric tracer. Now, I'm from New York, and in New York City, electricity is, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times the price of natural gas. And so I asked him a lot of questions about the cost effectiveness of using electricity to keep water hot when you're probably heating with natural gas, which is relatively much cheaper. He had some interesting answers. I think in New York City it might be a challenging technology, but in parts of the country where electricity is not quite as expensive as it is in New York, I think that there's some real interesting potential there. One of the challenges with providing domestic hot water in a multifamily building, this is a technology that's really probably catering towards commercial and multifamily buildings, you have such a large building that you can't just have a hot water maker, assuming it's a central hot water system, you can't just have a hot water maker in the basement and expect all of the apartments in a high-rise to receive hot water. You need to have a pump recirculating domestic hot water through the building all the time. The problem is that those pipes are losing heat as you're recirculating the hot water, and so you're adding heat to the building just in providing hot water. And so this is a technology that was designed to basically keep the water in the pipes hot and eliminate the need for that recirculation entirely. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I could see certain applications where it would be potentially useful. One of the big challenges for doing energy benchmarking in multifamily buildings is that we have tenants and we have owners. And there are many different types of structures through which energy gets paid within buildings. And so when we get utility bills from a multifamily building, if they're just the bills that the owner pays, they can represent some portion of the energy used in the building, from all the energy used in the building to heat and hot water for the building to just the energy used for common areas and none of the tenant spaces. And the bills that the tenants pay for can represent just the plug loads and lighting. They can represent the hot water. They can represent heating, cooling. And so one of the big challenges that we faced in trying to understand the data coming in was to define payment types for different kinds of multifamily buildings. And that was a big challenge for us. We've built a more robust way of benchmarking. Previous multifamily benchmarking tools, especially that are done by the federal government, require you to get the tenants' bills as well as the owners' bills in order to even get a score. And we recognize that for owners, it's really hard sometimes to get tenant bill data. We came up with a system of scoring using our energy scorecards tool that accounts for what portions of the energy usage we're receiving when we're looking at owner bills, what portions of the energy we're receiving when we're looking at tenant bills, and scoring based on the portions of energy that are represented in the bills that we're looking at.